The girl who mated with a human for the first time had difficulty walking. The docking bay of the human vessel smelled like iron and smoke, a scent the girl immediately wrinkled her nose at. She stepped forward with practiced grace, though the metal floor vibrated beneath her boots in a way she found undignified. Her long ears flicked back and forth like nervous pennants, betraying what her composed face tried to conceal. The human stood waiting, tall and broad, his uniform too stiff to look natural, his expression somewhere between formality and amusement. "You don't look as terrifying as the report said," she announced, her voice carrying in the cavernous hangar. He tilted his head. "And you don't look as alien as I was promised." Her ears twitched. "That is because I am better looking than the brochure versions. They never get my ears right. Too short." He laughed, though the sound cracked like a poorly oiled machine. She smirked, satisfied that her first strike had landed. She had been trained to negotiate peace, to represent her people with poise, but she found herself strangely entertained by the idea of teasing this human into losing his composure. They walked together through the echoing corridors, his boots clanging with every step while hers made barely a sound. He noticed, "Are you floating, or are your boots just stealth technology?" "Maybe both," she said lightly. "Or maybe humans are just heavy-footed. Do you always stomp around like thunderclouds?" "I call it walking," he replied, adjusting his stride as though to soften the noise, which only made the clanging worse. They arrived at a chamber where translation devices hummed softly in the walls. She ignored them. She preferred the sound of his unpolished words, full of rough edges and unrefined humor. He offered her a chair, but she eyed it suspiciously. "This looks like a trap." "It's just a chair. Your kind straps each other into these for launches through violent gravity. You'll forgive me if I hesitate to put my delicate form into something designed for bruises." He spread his arms. "You can stand if you want. I don't mind. But if you fall over from exhaustion, I'll count it as a diplomatic victory." Her ears twitched upward, a silent laugh. She sat anyway, stiff-backed and cautious, as though the chair might bite. They began with formalities. He spoke of trade routes, resource sharing, cautious peace. She answered in polished sentences, each word weighed as if carved from stone. But it didn't take long for the cracks to appear. His stomach rumbled mid-speech. Her ears caught it instantly. "Your organs are rebelling," she observed. "That was my stomach. It wants food." "Then perhaps it should speak with mine," she said. "It is humming as well, though more politely." He chuckled and offered to share human food. When he produced a small package of bread, she pinched it between her fingers as though it might dissolve. "This is soft. Too soft. Is this meant to be eaten or used as insulation?" "It's bread." "Bread," she repeated, dubious. She tore a piece, sniffed it, and finally bit down. Her expression shifted from suspicion to betrayal. "This is a sponge pretending to be a meal. Your species survives on this." "It gets better with butter," he said, though his grin betrayed that he enjoyed her disgust more than her approval. In retaliation, she offered him a vial of shimmering liquid, nectar from her homeworld. He sipped it, then gagged with dramatic violence, clutching his throat as though poisoned. "Stars above," he wheezed. "That tastes like flowers dyed in it." "They did," she said matter-of-factly. "Several very rare flowers. Each sip costs more than your boots." "Then your people have been robbed," he replied, still coughing. The room, meant for stern negotiations, echoed with laughter and mock insults. Somewhere in the ship's records, this encounter would be logged as a historic first meeting between two species. The reports would miss the way her ears quivered when she laughed, or the way his shoulders loosened when he realized she wasn't there to bite him. When their amusement faded into a quieter rhythm, she studied him, her gaze sharp, searching. "Do you know why they sent me?" "To talk to us." "To study you," she corrected. "To learn if humans are dangerous, if you are clever, if you can be trusted. They told me to keep my distance. They said you were unpredictable. And yet here you are." "And here you are," she countered. Their eyes held for a moment longer than diplomacy required. Then she flicked her ears and leaned back. "So far, I am unimpressed. You eat sponges and cough on nectar. Your species may not survive another century. He smirked. We've made it this far. Barely, she teased. They lingered longer than planned, circling around trade agreements and drifting into questions about stars, about languages, about the absurdity of socks. She found herself laughing more than she should have, enjoying the way his humor disarmed her rehearsed speeches. By the time she rose to leave, her ears were buzzing with an unfamiliar sensation. At the doorway, she turned, her expression half smile, half challenge. You walk too loudly. Next time, try not to shake the ship. Next time, he said. Try not to insult the bread. It's sacred. She tilted her head, her ears arching like crescents. We shall see. And she walked away, already wondering why her steps felt heavier than before. The next days unfolded like a strange duet neither of them had rehearsed. He guided her through the ship with the earnest pride of someone showing off his cluttered home, while she followed with the suspicion of a cat walking into a dog kennel. The hum of engines pressed into her ears, a constant vibration she claimed was trying to reprogram her bones. He laughed, but she wasn't entirely joking. This sound, she muttered, pausing in a corridor where the bulkheads throbbed faintly. Does it ever stop? Not unless you want the oxygen to stop too. She narrowed her eyes. So, the sound is keeping you alive. Fascinating. My people meditate to achieve serenity, and you choose rattling metal. We're adaptable, he said, or just bad at designing quiet ships. Her ears flicked dismissively, but she continued following, though every step carried the air of someone humoring a child. He showed her the control deck, where human pilots barked out commands and pressed flashing buttons. She leaned over a console, tapped one blinking light, and asked, What happens if I press this? You don't want to press that. Why not? Because that releases the cargo hold into space. She blinked slowly. So, if I press this, your socks float forever among the stars. Yes. She leaned back, smug. Tempting. They walked onward, their conversation skirting the line between mockery and genuine curiosity. He led her to the mess hall, where humans sat in groups, clattering trays and shouting jokes. She stood at the threshold, ears pulled back, like a queen surveying a battlefield of cutlery. They are loud, she whispered. They're hungry. They're both, she corrected, stepping inside. The chatter dipped when the humans noticed her. She felt their stares prick at her skin, but she refused to falter. She plucked up one of their metal forks, turned it over in her hand, and announced, I've seen weapons less intimidating than this. The hall erupted in laughter, tension breaking like glass. Someone slid her a tray of food, and she stared at it with theatrical horror. This thing is glowing. That's gelatin. Your food glows. Only the desserts. She poked it with her fork. It wobbled violently. This is not food. This is a nervous organism pretending to be dessert. He grinned. Try it. She took a bite, her expression twisting. It tastes like fruit, sugar, and regret. The humans around them roared with laughter. She tried to look offended, but her ears betrayed her, flicking with reluctant amusement. Later, when the mess had emptied and only a few crew lingered, she leaned closer to him across the table. Your people are not as terrifying as the story said. And you're not as serious as you pretend to be. She tilted her head. Do not tell them that. My reputation would collapse. I won't, if you don't tell them I almost choked on your flower juice. Her ears twitched upward. Deal. The hours stretched, and the conversations deepened. He asked about her homeworld, the great silver seas that stretched without shores, the towers that pulsed with living light. She described them with pride, but when he asked if she missed it, her gaze dropped for the first time. Of course I do. But I am here because my people needed me. They said no one else had the strength. Or the ears, he teased. She almost smiled. Yes, or the ears. When he spoke of Earth, she listened with equal fascination. She laughed at the idea of cows, giant walking milk machines, and shivered at the thought of hurricanes. But what surprised her most was not the facts themselves, but the warmth in his voice, the affection humans carried for a flawed, chaotic world. Her people prized perfection, harmony, flawless order. Yet here was a man who loved a planet that threw lightning at its own oceans. "You are strange," she whispered, not unkindly. "And you're not." Her ears bent back playfully. "At least my food doesn't wobble." Their time together began to stretch beyond the duties of diplomacy. She found excuses to walk the ship with him, always pretending it was research. He, in turn, seemed to enjoy her presence more than he admitted. They sparred with words, each insult sharpened into a joke, each laugh building something neither of them could name. But beneath the humor, an undercurrent pulled stronger. When their shoulders brushed in the narrow corridors, she felt a spark ripple down her skin. When he leaned too close to explain a system panel, she realized her ears quivered without permission. She told herself it was only biology, nerves reacting to unfamiliar frequencies. But deep inside, she knew it was more dangerous than that. One evening, after hours of exploring the outer decks, they stood before a viewport that spilled stars across the glass. The silence between them thickened, heavier than any words. He shifted, as if unsure whether to speak. She broke it first. "My people warned me about humans. They said you were reckless, impulsive, dangerous. And what do you think?" She hesitated. Her ears flicked nervously, betraying what her lips struggled to say. "I think they were right." But her smile, faint and trembling, told him she did not mean it as a warning. The night came without ceremony, as most human nights did aboard the ship, marked only by dimmed lights and the low hum of engines. She had insisted she was prepared for anything, repeating it with the stubborn pride of someone daring the universe to prove her wrong. Yet when morning arrived, she discovered the universe had taken her dare very seriously. Her first step out of the bed was a disaster. Her legs trembled as though the floor had been replaced with jelly, and her ears twitched so violently they nearly slapped against her cheeks. She clutched the wall for balance, glaring at the human still tangled in the sheets. "You broke me," she declared. He blinked awake, hair a mess, eyes still heavy with sleep. "Good morning to you, too." "This is not morning. This is sabotage. My legs no longer obey me." He smothered a laugh, which only infuriated her more. "Do not laugh at me, human. I was trained to withstand gravity shifts, plasma storms, even diplomatic banquets. But you," she jabbed a finger at him, "you have accomplished what no cosmic trial has ever managed. You have destroyed my ability to walk." He sat up, grinning now, and reached for her hand. "You'll recover. I demand medical assistance, perhaps a new pair of legs." "You don't need new legs. They are compromised. Look at them, shaking like frightened noodles." He laughed outright, and she glared with enough force to melt steel, though the effect was ruined when her knees buckled and she had to flop back onto the bed. "Perhaps," she muttered darkly, "your species is some kind of biological weapon. No wonder the galaxy fears you. Or maybe," he teased, "you're just not as tough as you thought." Her ears snapped upright in indignation. "I am tougher than a starship hull. But hulls do not do whatever this is." Despite her protests, she let him steady her as she tried again. Each step was a mix of stubborn pride and wincing complaint. She leaned heavily on him, muttering under her breath about reckless human experiments and irresponsible biology. As they shuffled toward the small table in the cabin, she glanced at him sideways. "If my people ask why I am limping, what shall I tell them?" "The truth." "Absolutely not." "Then tell them you slipped on the engine oil." She considered it. "Yes, that is suitably embarrassing without revealing the true catastrophe." The cabin's console chimed, interrupting their bickering. A message from her ship scrolled across the screen, a request for a health status report. Her ears stiffened at once. "They suspect something," she whispered. "Then tell them you're fine." "I cannot. They will scan my vitals remotely. They will see the anomalies." "What anomalies?" She tapped her chest. "My heartbeat. My cells. Something has changed." He frowned. "Changed how?" "Listen." She pressed her palm against his wrist, then against her own. "Do you feel it? Our rhythms. They are trying to match." He paused, concentrating. And yes, there it was, faint but undeniable. a subtle synchronization, as though some invisible thread was pulling them into alignment. "That's impossible," he muttered. "Impossible," she agreed. "Which means it is happening." They stared at each other, the weight of the discovery pressing down until she broke it with a sigh. "Wonderful. I came here to negotiate peace, and instead I am becoming a science experiment with legs that barely function." He smiled. "Could be worse." "How?" "You could have fallen for someone who eats glowing desserts every day." Her ears bent back in reluctant amusement. "True. At least you prefer bread sponges." The humor softened her panic, but the fear lingered beneath it. The changes in her body weren't something she could laugh away forever. She imagined her people scanning her, dissecting the data, declaring her compromised. She imagined them blaming him, or worse, blaming her for weakness. When she voiced her fears, he only shrugged. "Then let's not tell them yet. Let's figure it out ourselves first." She tilted her head. "You suggest deception? I suggest survival." Her lips curved, despite herself. "You are reckless, impulsive, dangerous. And you're still here." She leaned back, exhausted but unwilling to admit it. "If this bond grows stronger, it may affect more than me. My people will panic. Then we'll give them a reason not to." "You say that as though it's simple." "Maybe it is." Her ears twitched, skeptical but intrigued. She wanted to argue, to insist that nothing about this was simple, but she lacked the energy. Instead, she let herself sink into the chair, glaring at her trembling knees. "This is your fault," she muttered, gladly taking the blame. "And your responsibility to carry me if necessary." He grinned. "Deal." She tried to keep her frown, but a laugh escaped, light and unwilling. Even with her legs refusing to cooperate and her body whispering of changes too deep to ignore, she realized the truth. She wasn't afraid of him. She was afraid of how much she no longer wanted to be without him. Her people summoned her back to the starship with the kind of urgency that left no room for excuses. She stood in the shimmering light of the transport chamber, her ears pulled tight against her head, hoping the shaking in her legs would not betray her. The human stood beside her, arms folded, grinning like this was all a game. "Remember," he whispered, "engine oil accident." "If I collapse in front of them, they will know it was no engine oil," she hissed back. Then limp with dignity. "Make it look intentional." She gave him a glare sharp enough to cut steel, but the glow consumed her before she could retort. The council chamber of her ship greeted her with its usual cold precision. Elders sat in a crescent of silver seats, their robes shimmering faintly, their long ears poised like antennae tuned to suspicion. Their eyes flicked to her, then to the human who had insisted on accompanying her, and the silence thickened. One elder finally spoke. "You have been altered." Her heart lurched. "Altered? Your vitals," another elder said, tapping the glowing panel before him. "Your pulse pattern is irregular. Your cells display resonance unfamiliar to our kind. Explain." She forced herself to stand straighter, ignoring the ache in her legs. "It is nothing. The human vessel exposes me to frequencies my body is unaccustomed to. Nothing more." The elder's gazes shifted to the human. He raised his hand in a clumsy wave. "Hi." The silence grew colder. One elder's ear twitched, a gesture of disapproval. "You have shared proximity beyond what is necessary." Her ears flicked in alarm. "Proximity is part of observation. I am doing my duty. Observation does not explain cellular resonance." The human leaned closer to her and muttered, just loud enough for the elders to hear. "Want me to cough dramatically and pretend I infected you?" She elbowed him in the ribs, nearly making him choke for real. The eldest elder's voice cut through. "What has happened cannot be dismissed. The bond forming between you may carry consequences for our people." Her pride flared, desperate to shield both herself and him. "Then perhaps consequences are necessary." The chamber froze. The words had escaped her before she could stop them. The elder's ears flicked in collective shock. She swallowed hard, realizing what she had just admitted. Not just that something had changed, but that she valued it. The human's hand brushed hers, subtle, hidden, but the warmth steadied her. "You defy protocol," one elder said. "I expand it." she countered, though her voice wavered. The debate swelled, voices rising, overlapping. Terms like contamination, evolution, threat pulsed through the chamber. She stood in the storm of words, each one hammering against her ears, but her gaze kept drifting to him, and his steady grin, as if daring the galaxy itself to challenge them. Finally, the eldest raised a hand, silencing the others. The resonance must be studied. For the safety of both species, we will conduct examinations. Her stomach sank. She knew what that meant. Isolation, endless scans, the stripping away of her privacy until she was nothing more than a specimen. No, she said firmly. You will not dissect me like an insect. It is not dissection. It is knowledge. Knowledge, she snapped, is no excuse for cruelty. The human cleared his throat. I'd like to point out that if anyone's dissecting, it should be me first. Equal partnership, right? The elders turned to him with identical looks of disdain. He grinned wider. The tension cracked. She couldn't help it. Her laugh slipped out, sharp and rebellious. Her ears twitched with mirth, and though the elders did not smile, the sound carried through the chamber like defiance. In the end, they reached a brutal compromise. She would submit to limited scans, nothing invasive, nothing that would strip her dignity. The human would remain on the ship as control subject. He puffed his chest proudly at the title, whispering to her as they left the chamber, "See, I'm important now. Officially controlled." "More like officially ridiculous," she muttered, but her ears bent back in amusement. The scans confirmed what they already felt. Their rhythms were aligning, cells vibrating in strange unison. The elders muttered darkly about unknown risks, but the younger scientists leaned forward with wide eyes, fascinated rather than fearful. One even whispered, "Perhaps this is the beginning of something new." That night, alone again in the quiet of the transport chamber, she sank into a seat, exhausted. The human leaned against the wall, watching her. "They're never going to understand, are they?" he asked. "Not easily," she admitted. "They see danger. They always see danger first." "And you?" She hesitated, her ears lowering, softening. "I see change. It terrifies me, but it also makes me laugh." "Then we're on the right path," he said. Her lips curved, slow and unwilling, but real. For the first time since the bond began, she realized she wasn't ashamed of it. She was curious, maybe even proud, and though the future loomed uncertain, she whispered the words again, not to accuse this time, but to wonder. "What have you done to me, human?" The summons came not from the elders this time, but from both fleets. Human commanders and alien counselors demanded a joint assembly, the first of its kind. The hull built for the occasion was a hybrid, half human steel, half alien light, humming uneasily where the two technologies met. She walked in with her ears high, the human at her side, both of them the reason this unlikely gathering had been forced into existence. The leaders began as leaders always did: suspicion, accusation, endless speeches about risk and consequence. The resonance between her and the human had spread through the reports like wildfire. Some whispered it was infection, others evolution, some even muttered words like weapon. She listened, but this time she did not tremble. She waited until the arguing swelled to its peak, then stood. "You are all wrong," she said. The chamber fell still. "You look at me and see contamination. You look at him and see danger. But what has truly happened is not destruction, it is creation. You fear resonance because it is new, but everything new begins with fear." The human stepped forward, grinning at the silence. "Also, if I might add, she still blames me for breaking her legs. So if this was a weapon, it wasn't very well designed." A ripple of laughter ran through the hall, breaking the iron tension. Even a few alien ears twitched upward. She shot him a look, but her lips betrayed a smile. She turned back to the council. "You have always told me to observe, to learn. I have done that. And what I learned is simple. Humans are not what we feared. They are clumsy, impulsive, yes." She shot him another glance as he shrugged. "But they are also stubborn, curious, and endlessly alive. I would rather resonate with such life than return to silence." One elder leaned forward. "And if the resonance spreads?" "Then it spreads," she said firmly. We will adapt. Together. That is what our species have always done. Adapt to what the universe gives us. Why should this be different? The human added. Besides, if you think about it, worst-case scenario, everyone ends up with better dancing rhythm. This time the laughter was louder. Even the most severe commander smirked. The ice was cracking. The debate continued, but the fury had softened. The arguments shifted from fear to possibility, from rejection to terms of cooperation. The resonance was no longer painted as doom but as opportunity, something to be studied, carefully, yes, but also embraced. When the assembly finally ended, no one called for separation. Instead, they agreed to a fragile, tentative alliance, joint research, shared knowledge, a future neither side had dared to imagine before two stubborn individuals collided. Outside the chamber, in the quiet of a corridor that smelled faintly of both human steel and alien light, she leaned against the wall, ears drooping in exhaustion. It is done, she whispered. Not done, he corrected. Started. She gave him a long look. You are insufferably optimistic. And you love it. Her ears twitched, betraying her. Perhaps. They walked together down the corridor, steps no longer uneven. Her legs still remembered the trembling, but now they carried her with steadiness, not in spite of him, but because of him. She had come aboard the human ship a diplomat burdened by duty, certain of her own strength, afraid of compromise. She now stood as something else, not weaker, not broken, but more. At the viewport they paused. The stars spilled endless across the glass, and for a moment neither spoke. Then she broke the silence, her voice soft but sure. When I first asked what you had done to me, I thought it was a curse. And now, she smiled faintly, now I think it is a gift. He grinned, bumping his shoulder against hers. Best diplomatic exchange in history. Her laugh joined his, light, defiant, and full of wonder. The sound carried into the stars, and for the first time, she no longer felt alone. The bond was no longer something to fear. It was a path forward. And as they stood together, watching the universe stretch out before them, she whispered, not in accusation, not in shame, but in pride. What have you done to me, human? You've made me more than I was. The end.